Defund DOC is a movement in belief. Our mission is to stop oppression, exploitation, and bring about relief. Raise awareness, open eyes to the corruption in our midst. It's a higher way of thinking, but I'm sure you'll get the gist. Corrupt politicians and slimy administrators want to label us rebels and radical demonstrators. We are the ones who aren't scared, the voices that were never there, the ones willing to fight when no one else cared, the ones who stood up and finally said this isn't right, the only ones pushing back against the bureaucratic might. Support us if you can and listen for a few, because ultimately Defund DOC is for you.
Welcome to the Defund DOC podcast. Today we have a special guest with us. I'm Linda and my co-host Daniel J. Sims.
Hey everyone, this is Defund D. I'm here to welcome a transformational figure, someone that has had countless struggles in regards to being adopted, going to foster care, suffering mental health disorders such as anger and abandonment. Even though he grew up in a Christian adoptive home, he still experienced dysfunction. Graduating from high school, he found himself rudderless with nothing but anger and rage. While from the outside, he appeared as a model citizen and church member, even being a leader in his church youth groups and attempting to spark a career in music. His unparalleled love from songwriting found him recording hundreds of music videos on Instagram. Music was the one thing that gave his life purpose, but ultimately he found himself unprepared to fight his childhood demons of anger and abandonment. Facing 44 years in prison for stabbing someone and getting 2 counts of attempted murder, at 19 years old, he was forced to reevaluate the importance of life. As a Christian, he had incredibly difficult decisions to make due to the current violent and bloody prison political landscape. Assessing whether to stay silent and acclimate to prison political norms, such as assaulting other inmates, commonly called putting in work, mandatory workouts, or rampant racism. Would he choose what was right at the risk of his own blood, risking being viciously attacked in the big yard? We will find out in this episode. Now, he is involved in full-time ministry behind bars, over halfway through his sentence of 12 years, looking forward to re-entering society in 2029 with the new passions and vigor, anticipating release with purpose and goals. Welcome, everyone, to Zachary Budrow, DOC 422259.
Hey, what's going on, free world? I hope you guys are good out there, staying healthy, staying safe, staying crime-free. God bless you and your families. I'm so grateful to be a part of this. Thank you guys for giving me the chance to share my story.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's our pleasure. We need to expose the injustices that are happening in this country, and a lot of the time people just get shuffled to prison and get just forgotten about, and they allow the state to steal their narrative, and our job is to expose the injustices and highlight people's cases that need to be exposed.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, such as where you were born, where you're from, what high school did you go to, and where did you go to church?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 25 right now. I was born in 98 from Vancouver, Washington. My biological mom was actually from Spokane, Washington, was living on the streets of Portland when she conceived and happened to cross the bridge there and gave birth in Vancouver. And after that, my family brought me home and adopted me a couple of years later, and that's pretty much where I've been for the first 18, 19 years of my life. I moved back and forth between Portland and Vancouver.
Awesome. What high school did you go to?
Oh, yeah. I went to Skyview High School just north of Vancouver in a little area called Salmon Creek.
What would you say to those guys that you went to high school with in regards to, judgments, the stigma that society or actually the government and mass media has prejudiced our people against us? If you commit a crime, all of a sudden you're stigmatized as opposed to looking at you like a human being that has made a bad decision. What would you say to those people at high school that you knew that know you as a person? What would you say to them?
Oh, man. I would tell them, I've actually talked to quite a few of them, honestly, and I still am that same person you knew as a friend and like to hang out with and be around and stuff, but honestly, I'd say I'm a better person now, even though I went through these struggles of incarceration, and yeah, I'm in here for a crime I did commit. There's still injustice that happens in here, and it's horrible to see, it's horrible to experience and witness firsthand, but I've been able to take this and make something better out of it. And I would just encourage them to, next time they see somebody they know portrayed in a way by the media as this evil, horrible person, maybe try to view life from their perspective, maybe ask the question, why did this happen? Not just take the media at its word exactly, because they're going to try to sell papers. They're going to try to get good rating, but good ratings and selling papers doesn't always count for good journalism.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a fact. And, the mass media, back when I was growing up, there's practically only 3 channels, CBS, NBC, and ABC. And the true story of American incarceration was never going to be told by legacy mass media. And people were just being denied the true facts of what is really happening in this country, how our people are being systemically enslaved. So it's good that people like you, normal, neighborly kid that grew up amongst your peers in high school. What church did you say you went to, Zach?
Oh, I went to a church for a while. It was called Salmon Creek Foursquare, and then after a few years of being there, they changed the name to Real Life Foursquare. I know quite a few people who have actually attended there that I've met in prison that I had no idea ever showed up, and it's actually a small world. A lot of people have been in my neck of the woods.
Yeah, that's profound that you say that, because a lot of the times people have so much quick judgment about people, but then they come to find they don't realize until they actually come to prison that most of the people in here are your neighbors that just made a bad decision, and then the government has used that as a pretext to enslave you and give you long sentences.
Much of our audience is familiar with the trauma to prison pipeline. Can you tell us about how your childhood traumas impacted you?
Yeah, it's rough when you grow up in the church, you grow up in what's supposed to be a loving and supportive community, and even though in my situation it really was a loving and supportive community, I didn't know that it was, because the stuff we would talk about at church, the love, the grace, the forgiveness, the family, I wasn't always getting that at home. At home, there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of fighting between my mom and dad. And when you're supposed to trust somebody to take care of you and you end up getting hurt by that person in a physical way, it just impacts your life the way you feel like you can't trust anybody. You feel like, if this is how my mom is, if this is how my dad is, then how is God? And it really, really messes with you, because you grow up thinking that you can't trust your mom, you can't trust your dad, you can't trust your neighbors or your pastor or anybody who's supposed to be an authority over you. So how are you supposed to trust any authority in the world? And I was never taught to believe that, God was evil or bad or any of that, or that the cops were bad or evil or any of that. But I ended up experiencing things contrary to what I was taught at church in my home, where there was anger, there was violence, and there was dysfunction and trauma. But at church, we had to act like that really didn't happen and that we were perfect and had everything together. And so as a result, I grew up having a hatred for society, thinking that everybody was a hypocrite, everybody was two-sided and two-faced, and that the entire system was corrupt. And growing up, getting a little older, I'm 25 now, I'm still pretty young, I know, but what I realized was, if my response to the broken systems of the world, like the broken families, the broken homes, the broken school systems, foster care systems, and the broken prison systems, if I respond in hatred and anger, then they've won. Whatever evil is in authority, if I respond with hatred and anger and violence, then that evil is won, and I'm not about to let that happen now.
100%. That's a true fact, man. I mean, when I reflect on my pathway, I was a really rebellious kid growing up in foster care and being piped into juvenile and then going into adult prison. For the longest time when I was a kid, I was always rebelling against the attorneys, the judges, the prosecutors, and they're perpetuating the system, the job. But if you got down to the nitty-gritty, it wasn't benefiting me, but I couldn't articulate it. The only way I could express my frustrations with the lack of care, the lack of treatment, the lack of education, the lack of, any kind of humanly comfort or care that a government should give to its people, I could only express my discontent and anger towards that corrupt system was by rebelling against the attorneys and the judges and the prosecutors. And today, I'm able to channel into a positive format through the podcast, through my blogs, through my books. But when I was a kid, I didn't have that and didn't have nobody to guide me, didn't understand the proper ways to get redress and pursue justice. And that's why we're here today, to speak on things like this and peaceful means of highlighting our truths. And that's what you're doing, man. You're sharing your narrative, and we appreciate that. Just be, radically honest with our community so that we can have change in this country, because you deserve to be treated. You should have had some treatment. You had mental health issues, and instead what the government did is they criminalized you. They basically took away your life for 12 years now, and you should have maybe got a 5-year sentence. You should have got some treatment and a college degree and kicked out. That's what should happen to you. The government should not be in the business of enslaving their people. It should be in the business of restoring our people. And so I applaud you for coming on here and speaking the truth, Zach.
And you're right. I mean, when people grow up and you're just a kid, you have three responses. You have fight, flight, or freeze. And that's not an action. That's a reaction. But I'm so proud of what you got going on, man, with writing your books, doing the podcast, finding these peaceful means of truly showcasing what's really going on in here in a way that's not reactive. You've matured, you've grown, and I want to do that same thing in my life.
Absolutely, man. That's what we're here for. We're here to bring our people up, and Linda is out there in the community in regards to treatment solutions, so she's a very big advocate on the treatment front. And, you know, I've been incarcerated almost 20 years now. So you're basically the same age as my son. I mean, my son's 19. Well, he's about to be 19. And so when I look at you, I look at my son, you know, and there's countless people in here that I look at the same way, and I don't want to see this system perpetuated on my descendants. I do not want to see my descendants. I don't want to see anybody listening to this descendants come through this system. This system traumatizes our people more than it benefits society. I promise you. I promise you. How can you inflict the proportionality of the trauma that is being inflicted upon our people in this system is not proportional to the trauma that the crimes are being inflicted. So your crime, the person was very harmed in your case, very harmed. But that suffering is nothing to what you've already gone through. You've been through some real traumas in prison, and the proportionality of your incarceration is far outweighed that.
How did you find yourself so far from God that you ended up charged with attempting to murder 2 people?
Yeah, so like I said, it was the hypocrisy that really got to me. It was the being taught about love and forgiveness and grace, but not actually getting that at home that really messed with my head. And I wandered through life feeling like all the people I trusted had just up and left, and that all the people I trusted had just completely broke my heart, you know, and I didn't have anyone to trust or depend on. And so I started to go from trying to believe in God, trying to follow all the rules, trying so hard to be perfect for, you know, my authority figures, my mom, my dad, whoever I was trying to please, my teacher, the principal, to hating God and hating my mom and hating my dad and hating pretty much anybody who was telling me what to do, because I tried so hard to be perfect for God and for all these people, but at the end of the day, I knew I would never be good enough no matter what I did. And so as a result, I spent 2 years trying to convince myself that God wasn't real, that it was all a lie, and that I could just do whatever I wanted. I could, you know, try drugs, I could try alcohol, I could try sex, I could find something to fill the void. All this stuff I was taught as a kid that was wrong, I figured, you know what, why not go out into that darkness? All my friends are doing it, and they seem to be happy, and I'm sitting here trying to be this perfect, good kid, and I'm miserable all the time. And because I didn't talk to anybody about what was going on inside, it was all just bottling up inside me. And as a result, I didn't just hate God, I didn't just hate my family, but the truth is, anybody who had ever hurt me or done anything or said anything wrong to me that hurt me or caused me to no longer trust them, I have to admit I harbored hatred for them, and I didn't even realize what I was doing, because I thought that by not talking about something, I was forgiving somebody and letting go. But the truth is, I would relive those bad memories every single time I closed my eyes. Every time I went to sleep, I would dream those bad memories, and then I would meditate on them. And what I didn't realize is what I was doing was practicing unforgiveness, and that's what led me to react in violence like that.
Absolutely, and I'm thinking that your testimony is going to be a very big inspiration to a lot of people out there, Zach. I mean, a lot of people are trying to convince their communities and their parents and many people in their community that they're good people and they're upstanding, but while in their heart, they're far from God, and that's where you were at.
Can you tell us what happened that day mentally to lead to your current conviction?
Yeah, absolutely. I was harboring so much anger that I didn't even realize. I mean, I had friends tell me, man, you got to get help, and they obviously knew me better than I did, because I used to say, I got it together. I'm not struggling with anger. I mean, me, angry, I'm the nice guy, you know. And they would just laugh. I'd have this big old smile on my face like there was nothing going on. But there were some people that really could tell what was going on under the surface, and they tried to help me, but I didn't accept it. And then on the flip side, I had other people telling me the opposite, you know, inspiring and encouraging violence, telling me, look, you got to stand up for yourself. It's time to stop letting other people run your life and trying to please others. You got to do what's right for you. And so in the moment that I got into the fight with my roommate, I truly believed that I had no choice, but I had to finally stand up for myself. But because of all that anger that I harbored, when I tried to do something good by standing up for myself, I didn't do it with assertive words or a nice, gentle conversation, and it wasn't in a loving tone. I did it out of pure hatred, and that sparked first a conversation that I said things I could never take back, and then I did things I could never take back, and I stabbed my roommate, and then when I realized what I was doing and I saw the blood on the blade, I panicked. I turned myself in, and I told them whatever they asked me, whatever they wanted to hear, because I was tired of dealing with my anger, and I realized, man, I really do need help, because this is not right. This is not who I want to be. And that's basically what happened that night.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty compelling, Zach. I'm sure a lot of people can identify with that, having the struggles of mental health and just not being receptive to the calls for treatment. So anybody listening to this that's struggling with mental health, especially anger problems, would you recommend them to go get treatment instead of going down that road that you went down, Zach?
Oh, absolutely. And let me tell you, anytime you got somebody in your life saying, hey, man, you might want to get help, they're not your haters. Those are people who see something in you. And they're not saying this to judge you. They're not saying this to put you down. They're saying this stuff because they genuinely care about you, and they don't want to see you in a situation like the one I'm in right now.
Wow, man, that's very profound. There's a lot of people that are in here for trauma. Let me just ask you this, Zach. Were you treated for your mental health needs when you came to prison? Was there robust treatment for you?
Not at all. In fact, even though it's in my JNS that when I get out, I have to, pay the $100 to get the little mental health evaluation to make sure I'm somewhat sane, Even though I have to do that, there's nothing in prison that I've found that actually helps, that actually gives you a counselor that you can truly talk to on a regular basis about things. And I've seen some people get on programs where they'll be supplied with mental health medication, but in my case, it was just a simple conversation and talking things out that were going on behind the scenes in my head. I had to be honest with a counselor, be honest with people about what was going on with my feelings, with my struggles. And once I found people that I could depend on, some good, true friends, that's all I needed. But unfortunately, DOC didn't provide me with counselors. What I had to do is I had to hope to God, and thankfully He did provide, that I would find somebody who actually was willing to help me. And God bless me, man, because I found some serious people like you that have been willing to help, have honest conversations, just keep it real. But like you said, you see me like a son almost. You don't want to see the younger generation end up in a place like this, so you're willing to put in the extra effort to help people like me. And it's people like you that helped me get to where I am today.
Absolutely, Zach. That's really compelling. And, our audience loves vulnerability and people being honest. I mean, here we are in prison, surrounded by the worst of prison, of Washington State, perhaps the country, and we're able to get real vulnerable with our audience and share the story of what's happening. And we thank you for that, man. We really do.
With talking about the mental health, I just want to add in real quick that there are crisis lines that people can call if they're struggling. So definitely look up the crisis lines and talk to someone.
Absolutely. It's good.
Can you tell us about your prison journey as a Christian trying to avoid prison politics of violence and racism?
Yeah, once I ended up in county jail, after about a couple weeks, I had a life-changing experience where Sally sat me down, and he noticed that I'd recently gotten in a fight, and I was, worse for the wear. I had a couple black eyes and a busted nose, and he said, well, what happened to you? And I said, man, I think God's punishing me. And he basically shared with me that, no, that's not who God is. God doesn't punish us. That's what the whole Christ on the cross thing was, is He sent His Son to die so that I would never have to be punished, and that I truly was forgiven and loved, and that it's not about trying to be perfect. God is already perfect, and His perfection is good enough for me. And that message, that actual grace, the actual love, where I didn't have to worry about getting a physical punishment or getting beat up or getting judged by a God who actually loved me, that changed my life. And ever since then, I made that decision that, you know what? I want to live like Jesus. I want to love people. I want to be able to, when the time comes, lay down my life for somebody. If that's what it comes to, I don't want to take life. I want to give my life to serve other people. And when that transformation happened in my life and I truly understood what grace is and I truly accepted that God really does love me no matter what, I said, you know what? I can't do any violence for the rest of my life. You know, I can't have any hatred in my heart for the rest of my life. I can't harbor any anger, unforgiveness, or resentment ever again. And ever since then, my life has been completely different. I haven't had an argument with my mom or my dad in years, or my grandma, and I used to argue with my grandma all the time about religion, but I started to realize that these people love me in ways that I can't even understand. My mom and dad forgave me even though I came to jail. My victim sent me a letter saying, I forgive you, I love you, and I'm doing what I can to get you out of there. That doesn't happen to people like me, but that was my problem. I was thinking of myself as a person like me, a bad, broken, beat-up, bruised, horrible person who had no choice but to be angry. But what my cellie showed me was that God created me in His image, and He loved me, no matter what. And that truth convinced me that when I go to the big yard, they're going to give me a choice. I can either do what they tell me to do, which was hate, harbor judgment towards people based on the color of their skin, based on the nature of their crime. And eventually I knew that I would have to not only just do mandatory workouts, but I would have to use the strength that they're, forcing me to have to beat people up. I didn't want to live a life where I have to go put in work and build a shank and stab somebody or hide somebody's drugs for them. Like, I don't want to live a life where I'm hurting people. I don't want to live my life where I'm taking life from other people. Because what kind of life is that? So my cellie and a few other good people I met in county told me, when you get up there, they're going to want you on their team. You're young, you're in shape, they're going to try to get you and use you as a tool. And so when I went up to prison, I knew exactly what it was. I knew exactly what I was getting into, and I was terrified. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know if I would get stabbed. I don't know if I'd get jumped 3-on-1, get attacked by multiple people at once, but I knew that at the end of the day, I'd have to do the right thing. So I told my cellie after a couple of days, I'm like, look, man, I can't do this. This isn't who I am. And when we first got there, I told him I wasn't riding with nobody, and he said, all right, that's fine by me. You just work out with me, and you'll be good. But it was a lie. He ended up turning me into them later that night and saying, hey, man, this guy's got mixed race heritage. He's got Jewish blood in his ancestry, and he's adopted, and he's got a Hispanic sister. He's not really white. And that's all it took was me saying, look, man, I don't want to be racist. I want to do something good with my life. And that's all it took to get me clipped.
So let's just paint the picture for the audience. First of all, let's backtrack to the cellie that you talk about. This guy is just another one of us in here, another prisoner. Like, give us a brief description of this guy.
Yeah, he's actually about probably 48, 49 years old right now. But at the time I met him, he was about 43, 44. And his name's Pedro. He's a middle-aged Mexican guy, speaks English, without an accent. He's super American, covered in tattoos. But the thing is he had a heart unlike anybody I'd ever met in here. Previously, Everybody I met in county jail was angry and bitter, just like I was. They wanted to fight. They wanted to hate people. And then I walk in a room all beat up and covered in blood and bruise, and there's this guy that looks on me as a son. He's got kids my age, and he doesn't want to see them in here just like you don't want to see your kids in here. And he decided to look at me as a son, and he almost essentially raised me spiritually. He saw a broken, hurting kid and said, you know what, I have the tools to change this kid's life, and he did. And I'll forever be grateful for him.
Man, that's really, really, really remarkable, man. I love when people can personalize other people in this place that actually have heart. There's Americans in here that are suffering, and one of our goals last week in our podcast was to highlight the fact that God and Christ are calling the American people to unite behind defunddoc.net. God is calling the disparate peoples of this country to come together against this corrupt government that is enslaving our people. It's time that we have true reform in this country. And the American people that are in here, no matter what race they are, no matter their background, they are our people. And we should not be slave to a system like this. We appreciate you humanizing people and bringing the light to the conversation. Okay, so in regards to this going to Walla Walla, I can testify that it's a real danger. I mean, you actually have told a very, very, very remarkable story, because the thousands of people that go through the prison system don't understand that as soon as you touch down at prison, as soon as you come into the cell, what race you are, what gang you are, it doesn't matter. You are putting in work or you are getting worked. That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. So for Zach to go into, I did 15 years on these yards. I woke up on July 4th to see one of my friends being stabbed and multiple people being assaulted, and the violence and the trauma that I've seen, it's so compelling. So, yeah, I know the threat to your life was real. I mean, I think while you were there, somebody was murdered. Wasn't there in the little small yard? Were you there for that?
I believe so. Was it back in 2020?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I was in the hole when that happened.
Yeah. So a guy was essentially doing a workout, and somebody came up behind him when he was doing a decline push-up and kicked him in his face and snapped his neck, murdered him right there in the small yard. That quick. And the same exact thing could have happened to you, Zach. I mean, give the audience a picture of what really happened in depth. I mean, you went out to this yard. Was there premeditation on the behalf of the people that assaulted you?
Oh, I believe it. I mean, from day one, I get off the chain bus, and I see that they're putting me in an empty house with another guy coming off the chain bus. He's a little shorter than me. Come to find out, he's only a year older than me. So we're both, youngsters. I think I was like 21 at the time. He must have been 22. And the first thing I tell him as soon as that door closes is, look, I'm not a racist. I'm not about this. I'm a Christian, and I'm here to do my own time. So if you feel some type of way about it, I understand that you got to do what you got to do. And right then and there, he told me, no, man, I'm in the same boat as you. I want to get out. I'm putting my family first. I'm getting clean and sober. I'm staying out of this mess. And I said, that's perfect, man. And I locked it in with him. I gave him that little homie side hug thing, locked in the handshake and said, I got your back if you got mine. And he said, absolutely. Next thing I know, telling me that if I work out with him, I'll be safe. And that we're just going to work out with the white boys. We're not actually going to be white boys. So I went out there and I worked out with him, and I knew it. I realized he was just trying to suck me in. And I had a conversation with him every single night for 3 nights telling him, look, man, I'm not about this. I thought we said if I have your back, you'd have mine, and we protect each other so that we didn't have to do this whole prison mentality of politics and racism and violence. I'm over my violent days. I'm over my anger. I don't want to go back. And that night, he had a conversation, and I could tell when he came back that something was off. Something was a little different. Next day, he's like, I'm going to break you off on push-ups. We're going to get you big. We're going to get you in a great workout routine, and you're going to thank me later. And I kind of had a sinking feeling, but I was like, all right, let's do this. If I gave my life to Christ, I'm not here to judge these people. I'm not here to hurt them. I'm here to love them. So if that means putting my life on the line to show my celly that I'm about what I said I'm about, that I'm actually here to do my own time and get out to my family because I love them and I made that promise that I wouldn't act out in violence, and that's what I'm here for. And after they broke me off, I guess, for those of you guys out there, breaking somebody off on push-ups is like saying we're going to do so many that you can't even move your arms anymore, that you can't even breathe anymore.
Just so the audience knows, just to give a heads up, that's exactly what the tactic is. They work people out. Most of the time they have them doing legs or squats and get them doing a lot of exercises to tire them out so that when the torpedo comes, which is the person that's going to assault you or the multiple people that are going to assault you or the people that are going to stab you are fresh and you're exhausted. So the premeditation, ladies and gentlemen, this is the violence that we speak about. This is what your sons and daughters are entrenched in across this country. And Zach, you look at him, he looks like you could see him working on your car, like somebody that could be cutting your trees down. This is just a regular, nondescript, another guy that just be walking down the street. Yet he's in prison having to deal with these traumas that his own government is inflicting upon him. And it's all by design. We spoke about the scarce resources, and this is a true thing that's happening.
Yeah, while I was out there doing push-ups, and this guy was doing them right along with me, I could tell that there was something in the works because it's just like you said. There must have been a plan looking back because it took them a whole day and a half, 2 days just to get everything ready. I mean, from the night that I told them I was tired of this and I didn't want to do it to the night where they actually took off on me, they had planned everything. They put me through some rigorous workouts, and I did do the squats the first day, and then the next day I did the push-ups. And then right before yard ended, I noticed that they came in and they grabbed my celly and said, hey, we need to talk to you, and they took them off somewhere. And in that moment I knew, that's it. This is the time. This is what I heard about. I don't know if they're coming with the blade. I don't know if they're coming with the fists. I don't know if it's 1 deep, 2 deep, 3 deep. But when I saw that guy coming at me, I saw something in his eyes. I saw fear. And I couldn't help but laugh to myself, thinking, man, I'm the one that should be afraid right now. It's like probably, 40 guys against one. But this guy's afraid of me? And this guy's big and buff, and he's tatted up, and he's bald head, and he's about this life. But I saw fear in his eyes, and I saw that he didn't want to do what he was about to do to me. And that's when it dawned on me that, man, it's true what some of these other ex-white boys have said. It's not a system of respect like they claim it is. It's a system of fear.
Absolutely, Zach, and that's the true fact, man. A lot of these people are just trying to acclimate to the prison culture and the prison politics, but genuinely deep inside, they just want to go home to their families. They want to be respected, and they want to get through here alive. And, you know, the fact is that if they don't participate in that assault, guess what? That person is going to be assaulted.
Exactly.
And so it could all be ended today if they start treating us as Americans and giving us education and robust treatment solutions and minimum wage and start lessening the sentences, treating us like regular human beings with some dignity and respect. It'd be a different world. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Many Americans don't understand how corrupt and brutal the U.S. prison system is until experiencing themselves or through a loved one. Please tell our listeners about your experiences in prison.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, it was in county that my life really transformed and changed, so I was already prepared and set on a good course to do the right thing once I hit prison. So even though on paperwork I still looked like a really extremely violent person, in reality I wasn't. In reality I was ready to go straight to a medium or a long-term minimum prison. But when I got to Shelton for processing, I told them, look, I can't go to an active mainline with violence like, you know, Walla Walla or Column Bay. If I have to go to closed custody, I'm screwed. But they didn't listen to me. I specifically requested that I go somewhere where there was no politics, where I could do my own time, where I could communicate with my family and take programs. But instead of giving me the chance to prove myself, they threw me exactly in the opposite direction of what I requested for my own safety. And instead of trying to protect somebody who was a 20, 21-year-old kid, you know, and sending him in there with the sharks, they did the opposite. It put me in a situation where I had no choice but to fight. And it's almost like they just want the money. They want to see the violence. They want to see people stay trapped. And I don't know, man. It breaks my heart. I don't want to believe that our government's really like that, but I keep seeing it over and over, and I keep hearing stories over and over of people who had similar situations to mine.
Yeah, that's the compelling story, man, is like nobody wants to be a part of the prison reform struggle. Nobody wants to believe the government is using the same tactics they used against the slaves back before the Civil War of keeping people uneducated. They don't want to believe that they're implementing the same Jim Crow laws that they implemented against African Americans during segregation. Have you ever drank on a water fountain with a guard? Have you ever ate with a guard? Those are the same Jim Crow laws that they have inflicted upon the African-American community back during segregation.
Good point.
You can't shake hands with no guard in here. That is exactly what the same thing they did to the African-Americans during segregation. And it's a way to dehumanize you, to keep you oppressed, and it's also a way to not allow you to rebel against the oppression.
It's absolutely true. I mean, it creates like an us versus them mentality, and it's not something that we necessarily wanted to create. But it's something when you end up in a prison, it's like you're forced into. You see it happen, and you have no choice.
Absolutely, Zach. And it's like I said, nobody wants to be a part of the prison reform struggle until they experience the corruption, the guard brutality, the prison administration corruption. I mean, when they got you walking around with dog leashes and you're being tortured with solitary confinement for years or getting diesel therapy, being moved around from prison to prison, these are tactics that the Soviet Union used on political prisoners. This is where they learn these tactics. When they're walking by with their keys jangling every night to wake you, these are tactics that were learned from the Soviet Union. And we need to stand up as an American and say, you know what, I don't want my child to go through a system like this. And like I said, it's very hard for anybody to identify or believe what's really happening until they have a loved one or they've experienced themselves. So we appreciate you telling your truth, and maybe your story will open the eyes of some people, you know?
Thank you. I'm honored.
Here at defunddoc.net, we seek to turn all prisons into treatment and career centers, ending prison slavery, lowering sentences, and more robust reentry resources. Can you tell our listeners some of the reforms that you would suggest?
Yeah. First off, in a situation like mine where I spent 21 months in county before I pled guilty to my deal, and
I mean, I was already set on a right course for right living, and I already knew that I wanted to do right by my family, my God, and even by myself. I wanted to do the right thing in life, and I knew that. But because of the way DOC is structured, they had to rely on information in a computer, not information that I told them. So because of the current, policies and regulations in place, anybody who comes through with a high violent crime is forced to do a minimum year or two, depending on the charges, in close custody. So what that says is anybody who's done anything violent, even if it was accidental like a manslaughter or a murder too, you're required to do time in close custody, which is a trap and a setup for anybody who wants to turn away from a life of violence. So in the future, I could totally see them doing something where they basically screen every inmate that comes through. They ask them a series of questions to better get a feel for their mental health and where they're at in life, and whether they really want to change and do the right thing, or whether they want to stay stuck in those old habits. And if they had something like that and maybe had a mental health counselor on scene to assess them as well, they might be able to prevent things like what happened to me, where I ended up in a situation that was counterproductive to my sentence.
Wow. That's really profound, man, and we appreciate that suggestion. I agree with you 100%. When Americans come into the system, they should be offered the ability to go to a non-political, non-violent type mainline, as opposed to, hey, are you trying to be in a gang and be a shot caller and live that violent life? Because if you are, you can go to this one prison right here.
Exactly.
But if you want to have a career, you want to go home to your loved one, then you're going to have to go to this prison where it has no gang activity and there's no violence, and you're just going to get a career, you're getting some treatment, and you're going to go home to your family. And I'm pretty positive we're going to be able to weed out the gang members real quick, you know what I mean? And, currently the policy is, hey, let's keep all the gang members and ship them around to every prison and spread all the gang ideology, spread all the violence. That's how the hits are spread. You got every chain, you got new hits happening. So we appreciate your conversation, and we really hope that these reforms that we're suggesting and bringing up start getting really glanced at by the administration and the state of Washington and across the country. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for your time.
All right, Zach, man, we appreciate your conversation. We appreciate the audience having our backs and taking a second from their busy days to spend some time with us. We're coming through straight from behind bars. And thank you, Linda, for helping us get this message out. Man, thank everybody. We appreciate you. And we have a new project where we're trying to solicit phone messages from the audience if they have any stories about their loved one or their personal experience of mass incarceration, the criminal justice system, any injustices. We would like to hear it. Perhaps you would be on a forthcoming episode of defunddoc.net, and thank you.